since we're already starting a little bit late, it's probably best if we go ahead and just get started. Other people trickle in as computers allow them to. So welcome to the December meeting of the local North Texas AMS NWA chapter. Like the email stated and like Mark alluded to, he is the speaker for this evening. Given that he has been a previous president of this chapter, I don't know that a detailed bio is quite necessary, although I'm sure he could fill you in on that. But currently the MIC in Norman, Oklahoma. So take it away, Mark.
Fair enough. Appreciate that. I think you all know me. If you don't, I'm some guy. So we'll try to get this thing going. Amanda sent basically a feeler out a little while ago saying, hey, are you willing to give us a talk? And I said, sure. What do you want me to talk about? And then we figured out probably one of the things to kind of talk about would be a big wind event that we had up in Amarillo about 2 years ago now. But given that what we have in the forecast for tomorrow, this actually turns out to be pretty timely. So I think I've got my screen showing the actual presentation and not just my horrible emails to done. Can somebody, all right, thank you. Perfect. I knew I should have put Jennifer's in here somewhere with a cameo, but didn't quite get her. So really want to kind of talk about is basically pressure gradient gone wild. This is a event that we had. This was March 13th, 2019. If you don't remember it, I can't say I blame you too much. In the Texas Panhandle, this was a huge deal. In North Texas in this day, it was a little bit windy, but only about 20 to 30 miles per hour. But safe to say things were a little bit higher than that as far as up in the Texas Panhandle. So this will be my first dad joke of the evening. There will be several more. So I need somebody to kind of help me out that somebody might recognize what this is. So it was so windy on March 13th, 2019.
Is that your final envelope?
It's not quite the final one, but it was so windy on March 13th, 2019. We all became big fans. Thank you very much. I'm here all week. But you know, I knew that joke was going to blow you guys over. So I knew that would be a fairly good one there. I did warn Amanda there would be lots of bad jokes tonight, as if I could tell a good joke. You can tell that that is not Amarillo because you can see little pieces of green there in the background, but definitely kind of a windy day there in Taiwan. That was an actual hurricane. This one was close to a hurricane, or at least had hurricane force winds. But since Amarillo looks a little bit more like this with not much out there, and of course Amarillo is the Spanish word for yellow, living in Amarillo is pretty much like that, even with the yellow skin. But really what I want to talk about today is this, which actually happened. This is just a little gift that's going to go back and forth here and there, but there were on the order of about 25 18-wheelers that were blown over by high winds on this day. And we ended up with number 3 in the record books with an 80-mile-per-hour wind gust just after 3 o'clock or so. You can see there's a lot of clear skies, lots of wind, and basically trucks flying all over the place. And it wasn't just that one truck. There were multiple reports of crashes all over the place. Most of them did seem to come in areas where you did have a little bit more enhancement of wind around the grain elevators. In the GIF that you can see the truck just continuing to go over. That's about 2 miles west of the WFO, just underneath the railroad track there. There's a slight incline. I don't really call them hills out in Amarillo, but as that incline comes up, the wind was just definitely howling through there. Had a little bit of a problem with a couple of trains out in New Mexico, so this wasn't just the Texas Panhandle, and it was fairly widespread. And in fact, I don't have any idea how this is going to work. So I'm trying to share it. This is obviously, well, this is Blake. There's some random cursing going on. You've all heard the S word before, so I'm going to mute that out. He starts saying it quite a bit here in a little bit. There's the real-time footage of the truck there on Lakeside, which is just west of the Amarillo WFO. Somehow, some way, all the people in these images are pretty much unhurt, which was fantastic. But you can see this was a time about an hour or two before the peak of the winds. So we're talking winds in excess of 60 miles per hour sustained, a few gusts up around 68 to 70 miles per hour when a lot of these images were taken by Blake and some others. So you can tell the truck's just kind of going along, and then not a good day to be on the downwind side of one of these things. As you can tell, it's just a normal, beautiful, wonderful Tuesday afternoon there in Amarillo, with just trucks automatically kind of leaving their footing. So quite a bit of strangeness going on there. All right, let's see if I can get back to my PowerPoint. All right, so when we talk about Amarillo, or the Windy City, when we talk about it really comes down to Chicago, well, no. That, as you may know, if you don't, well, here's some useless trivia for you. It's actually nicknamed the Windy City back in 1893 in reference to all the city's politicians who were full of hot air. So they call all the wind from the politicians talking about them. So it's definitely not Chicago. And depending on how you want to look at things, Amarillo, Texas is either number 2 on the windiest cities list or number 6 on the windiest cities list. And some of the number 6, well, there's some cities like Cold Bay, Alaska, Mount Washington, New Hampshire, great places, but I'm not sure I would necessarily call them cities, although Mount Washington is a must for any weather nerd. And the only one that's higher than that is Dodge City, Kansas, is the windiest big city with an average wind speed of around 13.1 miles per hour. And Amarillo is not terribly far behind. Average wind speed throughout the year, 12.8 miles per hour, which sounds really, really low. Average out everything, and it does kind of wash out some of the highs and the lows there. And across the United States, obviously the South Plains are definitely one of those areas with the higher winds. And that's why we put a bunch of big fans out there and gaining some power and some everything else. But if you notice Chicago up here, the Windy City is only right there around 5-6 meters per second. Amarillo is somewhere in the 8.5 meters per second. So what we wanted to do is kind of take a look back through history and find the highest recorded wind speeds that we knew about in Amarillo. Records have been kept out there since 1892, October 1st of 1892 to be exact. Why I truly know this, I don't know, but it's one of those nice things. 84 is the highest wind speed ever recorded on May 15th, 1949. And then 81 and 80 are the next runners up. Anybody have a guess as to where the 84 mile per hour comes in? Why that's a little bit higher than everything else? Well, this is weird without a whole lot of interaction. Let's take a look back at the history books, because they do have the history books there at the WFO Amarillo office, January through June 1949. And as you can read there quite easily, well, maybe you can't read quite easily, but right up here it says at 20, well, there's the time, 2040, a tornado passed within 0.8 miles west of the station moving northeast. Pressure began to fall at 2015 Central, and the altimeter fell from 26.13 to 25.93 in just a few minutes. So winds east southeast at 15 to 20 miles per hour and up to 84 for the gusts. So tornado was the reason for the highest wind speed at 84 miles per hour. Obviously, that's not a direct hit, and it's not taken with ASOS or anything like that. But the 1949 tornado was retroactively given an F4 rating because, well, as you know, and as Twister it says falsely, the Fujita scale was not around until the early 70s, so had to go back and take a look at what's going on there. So this tornado right here, that tornado began in southwest Amarillo, ended about 1 mile southwest of the English Field Airport, and the WFO is really right across the street. So same general area. The NWS observation on that day was the 84 mile per hour wind gust. So safe to say we can kind of throw that one out. That's a tornado. Notice anything weird about the others on this list? You've got April 19th, June 19th, July 22nd, and March 13th as having 81 miles per hour or 80 mile per hour wind gusts at both areas. Well, the June and the July, most likely in severe convection season, and sure enough, both of those occurred with a downburst and a thunderstorm. So kind of gave us two weather scenarios that we can kind of take a look at and see exactly what was going on, at least to the best of our ability to take a look back and a look forward. And April 19th, 1973, this was the situation. Surface weather map, daily weather map. These things are great off the WPC archive, and you can pretty much get anything you'd like. If you're from my generation or slightly older, they are in black and white, but once you get up to my wife's generation and younger, they do come back in color just a little bit. So on the surface map, you had a surface low there in southeast Colorado. It's kind of hard to tell, but Amarillo is right in this area there. Southwesterly winds that day as well. The surface low was right around 985 millibars. Mean sea level pressure in Amarillo was 995. So at 3,605 feet, you're fairly high up there. So surface charts at 1,000 millibars really don't mean too much in the high plains. Upper low was in southeast Colorado and pretty much right on the doorstep as far as West Texas. And then April 20th of 1973, that low went from southeastern Colorado up into southern South Dakota. So kind of took a little bit more of a northerly track. Not one you really think that should be the case, but if you remember some of my Skywarn talks and other things, one of the things that I like to say is sometimes the way it really should be isn't the way things really are. So this is definitely one of those cases where that surface low is just deepening to the north and almost due north instead of the northeast. But that was where the upper flow was trying to take it as well. So let's fast forward to March 12th of 2019. So this is actually the day before the pressure gradient gone wild. Low pressure area at the 500 millibar level is in Baja, California, and pretty much straight southwest.
There we go.
Is that where I lost you?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so here's March 13th, surface or upper level low right across southeastern Colorado. Surface low, same area. And then if we move ahead one day, oops, there we go. Kind of moves off to the north and northeast, not quite as due north as before, but pretty much the same general pattern. In fact, so generalized that it's pretty much right there with the entire eye test. You've got upper level low pretty much in the same spot for both areas. This one's very hard to see. I don't expect you to see it, but there are some wind barbs here. So the jet streak is well behind the upper level system. at about close to 100 knots. So we've got the same type of feature there. And in 2019, surface low was around 975 millibars. The sea level pressure was 995 in Amarillo. Upper low was in southeast Colorado. Back in 73, surface low was 985, 995, and pretty much in the same spot. So both of them very, very similar type of events. And this was something that we kind of went back and looked to see, okay, what were these other storms in the past that gave us similar extremely windy conditions. But based on all this, something doesn't quite seem right. Based on at least these general numbers, shouldn't our wind speeds been just slightly higher in 2019? That
Yes.
low pressure area was right very close to us. So there may be something else going on. So the surface features there are pretty darn close. But that upper low is deeper. The surface low is actually just slightly deeper. Maybe that's debatable. And let's take a look at the ASOS that day. Distinct pressure drop during the day. We went from 997 millibar to 982. Our highest wind gust was 80 miles per hour. Our pressure definitely dropped throughout the day there in blue. Here's our wind gusts kind of oscillating around, and our temperature there in red. One of the better things that we like to use out in Amarillo as well. ASOS is good. West Texas Mesonet was a little bit better in this case. Same pressure curve, although this is altimeter, not quite apples and apples, but you get the same general idea. Pressure drop throughout the day, pretty gusty. Our highest sustained wind gust was around 61 miles per hour. Highest wind gust at the West Texas Mesonet site was about 78 miles per hour. Only 78 miles per hour, no big deal. And how unusual was it? Here's the daily average wind speeds for the month of March. And you can tell which day was the 13th. Not only did we go above average, but this was a couple of standard deviations above even a windy condition. So, all right, well, the winds should have been higher in 19 than 73. So maybe there's the role of the 850 jet. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Is this where we get to make a joke about the weather center in Norman, Oklahoma and all that?
I'll make all the jokes you want. But it's same internet setup that everybody else has. So. Okay, so 850 jet, 7 o'clock actually starts to decrease. So we're right there around 30 knots. So it's kind of weird. Not much really going on. You would expect to see these winds actually increase throughout the day, or that jet be maybe a little bit stronger, but the opposite is showing up. So this is really kind of weird. So maybe the 850 jet didn't have much to do with it at all. So this was about 1 o'clock. This is when the winds really started to pick up. And our 850 jet is gone, which we thought was just a little bit strange. And then by 4 o'clock, things are getting back to normal. So by 4 o'clock, we had this scenario with this is mean sea level pressure, upper level winds. Childress was at 1017.3, Dalhart was at 1022, and that's that red line there is about 173 miles. So let's do some math. Some of the math that I can come up with, well, maybe that's not all that good. Well, maybe some math jokes that might be better. So as you might have guessed, I called Dennis to get his help for it. He really wasn't very helpful either. Dennis, I love you, man. So we actually did some of the math in the background. This is a 14.9 millibar drop in 8 hours. That's losing a millibar and almost 2 millibars every hour for about 8 hours. And in the peak of the winds, this was a 7.7 millibar drop across 6 hours. So the pressure gradient was definitely very strong here. And then once the front came through, we had almost a 21 millibar rise in 11 hours. So we went from decent pressure at the surface to very, very low, and all the way back up again. So maybe the role of the H850 jet really wasn't necessarily the case, but still something's not quite right. So we had a stronger surface low, closer upper level low of comparable strength, and that low level jet moved away before the strongest wind. So what are we missing here? What might be an X factor on this one? Jen just said
Duplicate
something.
gradient.
Could be. The best thing that we could come up with, and if I'm wrong, Mrs. Dunn will tell me, was the roll of cloud cover. This is a kind of a cool look at that day. There's your surface cyclone just spinning across southeast Colorado, moving on off to the north. Kind of shows up a little bit better on this one, however. So Amarillo's down here. We actually had cloud cover until about noontime that day. In fact, we had some rain the day before, which was about an inch of rain, which isn't exciting to anybody except for Amarillo, where an inch of rain is just fantastic. But once the clouds finally cleared out, we actually got the wind speeds up to around 62. Oh, these are sustained winds, by the way. These are not gusts. This was just what the surface gradient was giving us. So we started out that day around 31 miles per hour, which to any Amarillo person is pretty much normal. The cloud cover came in. Once the cloud cover went away, we started getting up to around 60 to 70 mile per hour. And then here at the end, you can see the density difference with the cold front coming through, and the pressure rises starting to come back in. So very dynamic day. I ended up with about 80 mile per hour wind gusts there at the office, and driving home was not fun that day. And there's the density difference there coming through. So what I wanted to kind of do is go back and take a look at what the role of the clouds had, if they had anything. So this is actually the wrap sounding from that day. Yeah, it's not quite observational data, but it was the closest thing I could find. So by about 14Z, not much going on, but 15Z, 16Z, so middle of the part of the afternoon, morning rather, we're starting to mix out to around 67 miles per hour, which is only around 800 millibars or so. But you had all this cloud cover, which was really limiting any kind of surface mixing. Yeah, we had 67 mile per hour wind gusts, and we were not maximizing our mixing going on. Same thing at 17Z. So this was right around noon or so. We're at 74 knots. We're mixing down to about here, but had the clouds not been there, we were able to mix up to around 700 millibars, which not that out of the question, because that's what happened around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We could have been pulling down some of this 80, 82 mile per hour wind gusts from the upper levels. So this was a day where we actually did not maximize the potential, and we still ended up with an 80 mile per hour wind gust later on in the afternoon. So as the clouds started to go away around noon to 1 o'clock, we did indeed start mixing out 74 knots. This was right under 700 millibars, and we ended up mixing out this entire inversion. They closed the airport pretty quickly because planes typically don't like to land in that kind of wind. Yeah, for some reason they turned off all takeoffs and landings out there, which was definitely a good call. But really by 20Z or so, when we started to get free of the cloud cover, we're mixing all the way up here to almost 650 millibars. And this would have been about 85 knots or so earlier in the day. So the 850 jet could have played a role, but it didn't. The cloud cover actually kicked things off just a little bit more and kept the winds down on this day, which is kind of amazing to see. And then as the day goes along, we get more and more in the way of fewer clouds, mixing, higher mixing all the way up to, I think this was about 700 or 640 something millibars that we're mixing all the way through. So kind of a fun little day out there in Amarillo. And the 2 days before, March 11th and 12th, we had 1 inch of rain in Amarillo, which is fantastic. So there's absolutely no way we're going to get fire weather. Well, maybe not. Yeah, an inch of rain the day before, and we ended up with 2 wildfires of well over 1,000 or so acres. And had a hot spot show up just north of Lake Meredith. Shows up a little bit better in the satellite loop. Lake Meredith is this little cool area right there, and that fire is definitely not the cool area right there. So as time goes along, we had the winds really start to pick up. We had a power line blow down here, and that's what caused that fire. A little bit later in the day, there was another one well off to the east in Roberts County. Luckily, they were generally in the middle of nowhere, but this one did cause some problems because here's the front that came through about 6 o'clock or so, and firefighters had to reposition all the way around this fire to keep themselves fairly safe from everything. On the satellite, on the visible, it doesn't show up nearly as well. Here's the Lake Meredith, and right near the cursor, you can kind of see a little bit of a smoke plume start to peak up and eventually turn into some clouds, and then all the way up into Kansas, right where it should have been. Oops. So if you want to take a look at some of the data on this one, I'll try to get this.
You're back.
Yeah, for some reason, it just didn't want me to share a screen. All right, so anyway, so that's pretty much all I've got. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. But really it came down to, a pretty well forecast event, definitely anomalous, that we really didn't know what was we did know what was going on, but strikingly similar to the 1973 and the other high wind days across the region. The cloud cover really helped as far as what we were looking at. And with that, of course, you guys all kind of know me. You know some of my information. There's my newest picture. And, being here in Norman has not stopped my Oklahoma State tendencies. So I am happy to take any kind of questions, except for why the heck couldn't you unmute? I have no idea. I'll just save you the answer on that one. So sorry about that. And thank you for your time, guys.
Thanks for doing it. I really appreciate it. It was really interesting.
Happy to be here.
Mark, this is Bernard. The one thing when you showed the 2019 with the videos, I didn't see any dust. And I wonder, would that have been a heads up for even the truck drivers? If they saw dust blowing across the road, then they may think, oh, it's windy as compared to being in an air conditioned cab with the radio on.
We kind of thought that too, and we didn't really put that together until after the fact, quite honestly. But it was one of those weird things that why are people still driving in this stuff? It's obviously windy. It's obviously, kind of nuts out there. But as I mentioned, the day before, we actually had that inch of rain, so the dust was non-existent. And it really didn't start to show up until after a couple of fires started coming in. But I do think that had something to do with it. And if I could do it all over again, I'd go back and start messaging. There's not a whole lot of dust here. You're not going to see it, but trust us when we mean it, that it's windy as hell out here. Probably can't say that in a weather service product.
How far in advance did you all see this event and start messaging it?
About 4 days. about 2 days really hard. About 4 days out, it was like, holy crap, this could be really bad. And we did try to start saying that. About 3 days out, it was like, okay, this could be bad. Well, how historical really is this? And then a couple of us nerds really started to dive into some of the record books, and we kind of caught on to that 1973 date and started seeing some similarities, and then really started raising the flags. So 2 days for sure, up to 4 days, we had a little bit more of an update of that day is not going to be normal.
Was there anything that y'all did differently for that event that you like learned your best practice from as far as messaging or warning consideration, watch consideration, any of that?
Not necessarily. It opened a couple of our people's eyes to, how useful NWS Chat and some of the WebEOC software can be in real time. That was one of the first times that office had really gotten into the WebEOC, and naturally out there it's not called WebEOC, it's called something else, but the matter of seeing the chat or seeing the information coming to us in real time was very helpful, because it was obviously a bad day, but the scope of everything that was going on was magnified. So that was kind of a takeaway for us, to always have something, with your hip pocket there with the emergency managers, and try to get their information as well. And a lot of the stuff that was coming in through VOCI, which is their system, we weren't really passing that along until we noticed that the city of Amarillo was doing the same. But it really did help the situational awareness, and we knew pretty close when things are going to get bad and when things did get bad.
Hey, Mark, enjoyed the presentation. I just emailed you the sounding from that morning for KAMA. And the photograph is really interesting.
I did not go back and look at that, quite honestly. I will admit to pulling some, I don't want to call it executive privilege, but it was not me that was going to go out and do that weather balloon in 60 mile per hour sustained winds. If Dunn was there, I would have made her do it. And she would have said no.
I've launched in tropical systems close to that. I might have been able to pull it off.
Yeah, this is true. I just didn't want to do it.
I have faith. I have a question for you. So was there any kind of impact with regards to the ISDs given the time of day it was? And it may have been during spring break, I don't know, but.
It was during spring break, which was quite good. I do remember thinking that was a very good thing. However, we did kind of can this up and start taking into account for some tabletops. Of course, 2020 happened, and then it was all virtual tabletops. So we did start talking to them about, okay, do you have a plan for releasing your kids at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon with this? And I don't think we ever got anywhere as far as true actionable items, but it's a good talking point to start getting people to think about some things there. And with school buses out and about, and the West Texas philosophy on postponing or canceling school is you don't do it. So yeah, they're still going to go, but the last I heard, they were still looking at different ways to mitigate the situation, which means they haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody's done any studies of the dynamics of those school buses. What sort of wind speeds blow them over?
Yeah, it wouldn't take 60, that's for sure. Yeah, that's a scary one for me. You know, especially out there. I do know, well, on that day, well, Katie was on spring break, but I think Christy and I kind of decided that Katie was not going to ride a bus that day. She was going to be taken to school or coming back, and I think that's what a lot of people out there would have done that day. But it would not have been a day I would want my kid on a school bus out there, or anybody else's kid for that matter.
Hey, Mark, was the,
Sure.
yeah, was the DPS kind of on alert when they?
Oh, yeah.
Trucks to blow over? You got 18.
Yeah. Yeah, they were everywhere that day. They were them and TxDOT. They were on day 3. They started to get the message about high winds and started doing the dynamic messaging signs and doing this and that. And on that day, I think every DPS trooper was pre-deployed somewhere, and they were all just kind of waiting for accidents to happen and shutting down highways here and there and making sure you can get people out and keep them safe. But yeah, they were all over it.
If there's not any more questions, I want to thank you again for taking the time to share all of the information with us. It was a really cool presentation.
Thank you.
And don't be a stranger.
Oh, there's nobody stranger than me. You know that. So I appreciate you guys having me, and it's great seeing and hearing some of you. And sorry about the technical difficulties, but apparently I am still a moron. So oh well.
Mark,
Sir.
yeah, Mark.
Yes, sir. Stanley.
Yeah, we've got a gift certificate for you, and I need to mail it to you. So what would be a good address for you? The Norman office?
Yeah, the Norman office, 120 David L. Boren.
Okay. And the zip?
I don't know. 73072.
All right. Okay, well, anyway, we do thank you very much, and your gift certificate will be on the way, and you have a Merry Christmas, and that's official.
Appreciate that, and you guys have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me, and again, I'm sorry for the technical weirdness, but I guess we roll with it.
It's all good.
Yep.
As far as any other chapter business, there really isn't anything to pass along other than if you haven't paid your dues, feel free to send those in so we can put them in the account. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, and we will touch base with what the plans are for January.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Christmas.
Fair, Mark.